So Joseph was amazed and rushed home to tell Joseph. To tell Alton, and that afternoon at 3 p.m. they were the first in the line, because there was a line. In fact, the whole town seemed to be waiting there to see Fisher Spooner. I think they'd found out about them on the internet from fisherspooner.com, or perhaps they read the New York Art Press or Freeze magazine. In fact, Freeze magazine was now, much to everybody's surprise, available in Bart's drugstore and magazine store. So they were queued up, and suddenly this limousine arrived, and out stepped Warren Fisher and Casey Spooner, and they were dressed. Well, it's very difficult to describe how they were dressed, because it was really extraordinary. It was a kind of gold lame, body-clinging outfit for Casey Spooner, with feathers, a little bit reminiscent of Brian Eno in the early 70s. He had feathers in a kind of peacock collar, just kind of all around his head, in a sort of virtual halo of lame. In fact, the feathers also were sprayed gold. And he had this kind of rather weird mask on, which covered half of his face and made him look like it was a bit like a hockey mask, an ice hockey mask. But very elegant and streamlined. He looked sort of like Hermes, the Latin messenger god. So, and then Warren Fisher was dressed like Klaus Nomi, circa 1980, and was carrying a very large bank of synthesizers, or he had actually some henchmen carrying them for him. So they set up in the store, and while they were setting up, Joseph actually went over to Warren and said, "Listen, I'm just such a huge fan of your work. I have a signed some signed things from you already, and your poster is up on my wall, and I just wanted to say how fantastically unexpected this visit to Athens is." And Casey said, "Well, we just wanted to come here. I don't know how we heard about it. In fact, this whole thing has been a bit of a surprise. We were just told about this yesterday, but we flew in as soon as we could, because we were just very happy to get our music out there, and we know that it means a lot, especially in these smaller places." So they were talking for 5-10 minutes, and then I think I just have to walk in the forest a little while. I always find a good walk in the forest really fills your lungs with air and gives you a fresh burst of inspiration. So I was, I don't know what happened. I think that a cloud passed over the sun and the forest was temporarily obscured by mist. I'm not quite sure. I was describing Fisher Spooner's performance in the record store, Bart's record store, and they took over a small corner which was normally full of Cher posters, and they pushed all those aside for the occasion. And they performed a new song, a song which was not on their album, which very few people had heard, apart from a few New York metropolitan sophisticates. It was called Cupid. And at the climax of the song, Casey Spooner literally pulled his heart right out, or what seemed to be his heart. It was actually a very cunningly concealed pig's heart, which was full of theatrical blood. And he squeezed it in such a way that it exploded, and blood flew all over the audience. And of course, Joseph and Alton were right at the front, and they got blood spattered all over them. But it just that seemed to add to the fun. It was really just tangible evidence that they'd been there, and they knew that the blood would wash off easily. So they weren't too concerned, and they were even happier when, at the end of the show, Casey shook their hands and gave them a couple of angel's wings, which were all white fluffy angel's wings, which I guess was some sort of promotional item for the new Cupid single. So they left, and they were like bloody angels. They were walking through the streets of Athens, down Main Street, holding hands, a black man and a white man, both wearing angel's wings. When they came upon a very strange figure, he looked like a sort of hunchback with sort of curly goat-like horns. He was climbing a telegraph pole, as if he was from Verizon or something, as if he were from the telephone company, and he were just going to repair the phone line. and he did something at the top, and then he climbed down again, and he started. He was taking olives, and he was passing them. Seemed to be passing them through his fingertips, and then they would go sort of under the sleeve of his rather baroque Austrian jacket. It looked like an Austrian jacket, and you'd see the bulge of the olive, and then it would go out and sort of come out of his ear. And they thought, well, who is this weird magician? Or is he a performance artist? And it turned out to be, in fact, Matthew Barney. Matthew Barney had come the same day as Fisher Spooner to Athens Folktronia, as it was now becoming apparent that this was. And he was mute, really. He was a bit like Harpo Marx. He really never said anything. But suddenly, all around him, there was the swelling of Jonathan Bepler's music, which you can often hear accompanying Matthew Barney films. And it turned out that they were shooting Cremaster .5 in Athens. Athens was chosen just as the Isle of Man had been chosen, and I guess Nevada as well. Where was it? Where the Gary Gilmore film was shot. Athens had been chosen as the site of the very privileged site of one of the Cremaster videos. And what's more, Matthew, having just shot a scene up the telegraph pole, needed some extras, just the same way as you see those beautiful, delicate, sylph-like, Nicolas Poussin-like Japanese women in, Cremaster 5. So Cremaster .5 was going to feature as the sort of muses of Barney, these two very fine figures of men, Joseph and Alton. So they were kitted out by the costume department, because of course Matthew Barney productions are increasingly big budget, and the Cremaster films go out of sequence. And .5 being the latest was the biggest budget. So they were kitted out. They already had Angel's Wings, but Barney wasn't sure about that. It was a little bit outside of his control, so he didn't like the Angel's Wings, but what he did was he made them wear these leather tunics, which were entirely covered over. Oh wait, I'll just go and walk in the forest.